Hey everybody, it's Kat and you're listening to Elemental Journey, the podcast that takes you on an exhilarating journey through the Avatar universe. Today we'll be talking about the element of air. As their name suggests, the air nomads are a nomadic group with 4 temples spread out all over the globe. It should come to no surprise that their element is air, existing constantly but never in one place. Given that they are a deeply spiritual culture, largely founded on Buddhist monks and incorporated ideas from both Tibetan and Hindu culture. Unfortunately, the Air Nomads, a peaceful and modest society, were attacked by the Fire Nation, sparking the start of a 100-year war. After the war, the majority of the nomads were eliminated, leaving only traces of their culture for upcoming generations. Airbending, which is based on the Baguzen martial arts style akin to Tai Chi associated with Taoism, is an ideal fit for the nomadic people and peaceful lifestyle. Similar to air itself, the primary idea of airbending is to avoid resistance. Airbenders are able to control the air both inside and outside of their body that can run as quickly as the wind and create the appearance of flying by bending the air around their gliders. On the contrary to its non-resistant nature, airbenders mostly utilize their opponent's strength and momentum against them. If they are forced to fight at all, airbending can also be used as an offense tactic, such as producing forced back air-based blows. Subtypes of airbending include making of balls, tunnels, and funnels for the air to pass through, including the childlike air scooter Aang invented. Though airbending is featured the least in the original series of Avatar: The Last Airbender, the sequel series, Legend of Korra, reintroduces the air nomads to the world. This reintroduction showcases the airbending subtypes, including flight without a glider, once freed from their earthly tethers, and airbenders can become lighter than air and fly. The origin of airbending. The flying bison, a respected animal in the air nomad culture, is credited for teaching airbenders how to bend objects for the first time. The bison, as its name implies, can fly without the need for any obvious form of propulsion. Typically, they use their large beaver-like tails to generate gusts of wind. There is also a rumor that the flying bison provided the airbenders with the arrow mark for their tattoos. As we see on Appa, he has an arrow on his forehead and down his body. After training is over, an airbender receives these tattoos, which represent their level of mastery in the airbending art. Owing to the strong spiritual influence in their culture, all air nomads, in contrast to those in other countries, are airbenders by birth. The fighting style of airbending. Airbenders do not look for battles or places to directly target their enemies. Airbending is based on the Baga art form, also known as circular walking or 8 trigan palms, also influenced by Shirin-Ryu, known as heart-to-heart boxing. This martial art focuses strength in the core of the abdomen through quick, evasive movements that mimic the energy and explosive power of air. Walking in a circle based on the principle of walking the 8 trigrams is Bagan tactics. It consists circular motions that prevent the opponent's ability to hit or launch a direct attack. The full body moves using smooth twisting and untwisting movements that include dramatic footwork, opening hand technique, strikes, and throws. Moving behind your opponent and mirroring their moves is a typical strategy to prevent them from turning the practitioner. Airbending is the most active of all bending disciplines, And unlike other bending disciplines, it is almost exclusively a defensive skill, similar to its practitioners. According to Iro, air is the element of freedom. So here's a list of some airbending abilities. So there's the air ball, air blast, air bomb, air cushion, air manipulation, air punches and kicks, air shields, air swipes, air wheels, the breath of wind, cannonballs, enhanced agility, enhanced speed and wind runs, gliding takeoffs, heat regulation, smooth stances, um, air pulls and suctions, thundering gust, and twisting winds. Now here's a list of airbending master levels. So we have the air blade, the air cocoon, the air sprout, the air vortex, airless voids, cushions that forceful fist, explosions of air, suffocation or asphyxiation, levitation, returning the wind, shock waves, and tornadoes. Avatar level airbending is air spears, strong winds, and then again tornadoes and hurricanes. Some special techniques are the air scooter, as we know, Aang invented, cloud bending or cloud manipulation, hypersensitivity, flight, assisting with flight or gliding, and then spiritual projection. So the opposite bending art to airbending. Airbending is the most passive of all four elements since it empathizes contract mobility, deflection, and avoiding their opponent, all of which are in the line with air nomads' pacifist ideals. The exact opposite of airbending is earthbending, wherein earthbending absorbs an overwhelmed oncoming attack with superior force, while airbending invades and deflects them. While earthbenders must be securely planted in one location in order to bend, airbenders are always in circles. On the other hand, firebending is seen as a spiritual antithesis of airbending, since it pits passion and aggression against calmness. Airbending is by far one of the most dynamics and nimble of the four element skills, although it is neither more nor less strong than the other three. The user's strength and talents are what decides who wins. Some training tools. An airbender can employ a variety of objects to help them refine their skills and become experienced in the art. The airball court doubles as a place to play airball and a means of balance. Two abilities critical to airbending. Since airbending is the primary method of controlling the ball, airbenders can also increase their precision. As a training technique, spinning gates stress that an airbender must trust their invasive movements in order to pass through. Mastering the spinning gates requires one to be more like a leaf and follow with the wind rather than pushing their way through. Weapons of airbending. Airbenders frequently use their signature staff to enhance their ability in combat, in contrast to benders from the other nations who hardly ever use weapons in addition to their bending. The staff greatly cause the ensured air blast to release additional energy. The staff's thin profile allows for more of precision control over the currents, which can be formed into crescents of air that resemble blades and can cut through solid objects. Jessa, the mother of Avatar Kyoshi and Aang also show how metal fans can be utilized in conjunction with airbending. Aang also hints that there might be a wind sword when the Team Avatar was pursuing a weapon store in the Fire Nation. He said that an airbender might be able to channel the air from a sword by swinging it around like a blade, much like a confined air slice. The strength of airbenders. Airbenders have an infinity supply of their element because air is present in all parts of the atmosphere. Unlike water and earth, which require a physical source of the element to be bent, or fire, which can be delayed by cold conditions. They can never be kept inside or prevented from accessing their element by external methods. The public has never engaged in warfare with airbenders since airbending has been all but non-existent for 170 years. People can only learn about the principle of airbending through past information, but most people are aware of the combat techniques and tactics of the other three elements from either experience or past knowledge. Weaknesses of airbending. So, airbenders' principle regarding fatal moves. Airbending is considered the most dynamic of the bending arts, but its purpose lacks of lethal movement makes it more defense oriented art form, which has generated controversy. This feature alone reflects the benefits of the air nomads, which, aside from the Avatar and before the harmonic conversion, were the only individuals with the power to preach about the values of all life and necessary of avoiding violence wherever feasible. Although an air sword may cut through solid stone, and there have been cases where an airbender has used brutal force, even deadly force, during a battle. This does not imply that airbending is not deadly. For example, Avatar Yuchen confessed to actions that were clearly against her nomad teachings. Even though she believed they were for the greater good, Monkiatso also killed several Fire Nation soldiers during the attack on the Southern Air Temple before passing away. And Zaire, who disregarded the air nomad pacifistic ways, used his ability to suffocate and or asphyxiate the Earth Queen. Unlike other bending forms, airbending requires ongoing spiritual awareness. An airbender who loses their connection may find their abilities diminished. Jessa, for instance, had to supplement her airbending after turning into a criminal and living more of a materialistic lifestyle. So, the element of the airbending symbol. The symbol for air and airbending is a closed counterclockwise invented triple spiral. This symbol is seen on the pendant on Monkiatso's prayer beads and also appears on Aang's prayer beads, which are seen in Sows and Comets Part 4, Avatar Aang. Spirituality and airbending. In one of the 4 air temples located all across the world, tucked away on top of a mountain range are on secluded islands, where the cool breeze aids in airbending. Young airbenders are reared. Only men work in the northern and southern air temples, where airbending monks teach benders about their crafts. Reports from the Comic-Con in 2005 state that there are only females in Eastern and Western air temples. It is agreed in the episode of The Storm that Aang would complete his training at the Eastern Air Temple, and it was there that him and a few other young airbenders where they met Appa, their animal friends. When an airbender completes all 36 levels of airbending or invents a new airbending technique, they are deemed masters. Aang being the exception in this situation since he mastered just 35 tiers but developed a new technique, which was the airball. So their foreheads, the back of their hands, and the top of their feet are where airbenders with the mastery are identified by blue tattoos that run along the head and the limbs and end in an arrow, while female airbenders shave their foreheads but leave the back of their hair uncut. Male monks have entirely shaved their heads. In Book 2, Chapter 1 of the episode The Avatar State, Avatar Yuchen appears. And Sister Io, I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong, she's an airbending nun, is portrayed as being in charge of the female airbenders of the Eastern Air Temple in Appa's Lost Days in a flashback. When the Avatar reincarnates into an air nomad, the air monks test the young airbenders to see if they are a reincarnation of the Avatar by having them choose toys out of thousands of options. However, this rite is presumably not unique to the air nomadic culture. The Avatar has been found if they choose one of the 4 Avatar relics, the toys from their past incarnations. Typically, a young airbender isn't allowed to know if they are the Avatar until they are 16 of age. On a side note, Tibetan Buddhist monks utilize this similar test when they are anticipating a Dalai Lama rebirth. The psychology of conflict avoidance and respect for all living things is commonly beliefs by the air nomads. This explains why airbending empathize defense and why they don't seem to use many deadly finishing blows. Every air nomad has the ability to bend due to their spirituality, which varies depending on the population's numbers. While bending generally comprise only a small portion of the larger, more popular nations, as demonstrated throughout the series. Airbending, empathy, intuition, and imagination to an airbender. There is always another path to take as air flows wherever it can. The air nomads have the smallest population but the highest level of spirituality. Lastly, I want to talk about the air nomad genocide. So the airbenders were subject to genocide by the Fire Nation a century prior to the event portrayed in the animated series to stop the Avatar cycle of rebirth and guarantee the Fire Nation to trumpet over all 4 nations. The temples were overrun and all the airbender monks were massacred. Ironically, Aang, our 12-year-old little airbender and the Avatar, he fled his family just before the war started and ended up trapped in an iceberg close to the South Pole. As they think he was, so as we watched the series from the beginning, we assumed he was the only survivor of the massacre. But if you listen to my first episode of my podcast, I go a little bit more in depth of it. So as we know, Aang and his companions, Momo, which is a winged lemur, and Appa, a single flying bison, are the last known examples of airbending culture. Since then, displayed in the Earth Kingdom residence has taken up residence at the deserted Northern Air Temple, headed by the Machinerists. Guru Pathak, I might be saying that wrong, resides at the Eastern Air Temple and says he is an old friend of Monkiatsu. The bodies of numerous Fire Nation troops and Monkiatsu's body are only found in the Southern Air Temple. Additionally, some air nomads could have survived the 100 Years conflict because towards the end of the episode of Avatar Aang begins wearing an orange modest robe. They could have thought that likely it was made especially for him. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of Elemental Journey. If so, please rate, review, respond to the questions and the poll. Also, don't forget to hit that follow button so you never miss another episode again. You can also find all my socials on my Linktree at linktree/Avaverse Elemental Journey. AVAVERSE Elemental Journey. Feel free to share this podcast with all your Avatar crazed friends. Till next time.